Hello, and welcome to the next section on airports. We'll cover a number of things with the National Airspace System and airports today, including airports and airport markings. Before we go there, I want to remind you, and now that you've had a chance to review a number of videos and to attend a number of classes, that your best friend on the Part 107 test is often the legend found in the beginning of the supplemental materials that will be given to you at the test. You want to familiarize yourself with this chart in your test supplement materials. This is currently an orange book, although it will change colors in the future, that will have all of the figures that will be given to you during the test for which the questions will be related to. We'll cover a couple of them today, but for the most part, you want to remember this, especially this section here on Class B airspace, C airspace, D airspace. The ceiling for Class D, always in the brackets. Class E airspace, that might be designated near an airport, which would be a magenta dash line. The shaded magenta that will tell you Class E airspace starts at 700 feet above the surface, meaning everything below it at that particular airport is Class G. And again, I am still looking for this blue shading on an actual sectional chart, but when it is absent of the red or the magenta here, this Class E airspace will then begin at 1,200 feet. So those are some things you want to remember. Also remember your obstructions that will be found on your sectional chart and often on the test, as well as the fact that next to each obstruction, where possible, and occasionally these will not happen, the first number will be the mean sea level number, which would be the height of the obstruction, and the number beneath it in parentheses is the height above ground. If you can't remember which is which, as you can see, they are noted on this legend available to you for the test. Also, you will see the alert area, the prohibited area, special airport area, traffic area, air defense, national security areas, terminal radar service area, all the things we discussed. And remember, there is topography and ground-based geographic markers on the sectional chart as well. Probably the other thing you want to remember is, as a general rule of thumb, if the airport is denoted in magenta, it is non-towered. If it is denoted in blue, it is a towered airport. And then you have the other markers for airports or heliports here. And remember, especially on the test, for the most part, the frequency that they will be looking for more often than not is the one denoted by the common traffic advisory frequency, or this C that is then surrounded by blue coloring there. And if you need to look anything up, remember this flag here tends to represent a high traffic area, usually around an airport for landing and takeoffs, kind of a visual site for pilots. And you may have questions related to glider operations, parachute operations. So you'll want to know that these symbols exist. If you forget anything, the great thing is you can turn to this page while taking the test in the supplement and determine what it is you missed. Another part of the test is, and part of the sectional chart, is this notion of latitude and longitude. So let's try to remember. Latitude are these lines of latitude that go horizontally around the Earth. These are imaginary lines that were created for geographic purposes. And we talk about the imaginary line in the middle of our planet called the equator. The equator is in the middle. It is imaginary. You cannot go down and see it. But what we should know is when we talk about lines of latitude, they start at 0 at the equator and go to 90 degrees north. And they start at 0 degrees at the equator and go to 90 degrees south. Therefore, there's a North Pole and a South Pole and an equator in the middle. 90 degrees representing half a circle dissected by the equator. Additionally, in order to create a grid system around our planet, there are lines of longitude. Longitude are imaginary vertical lines that appear throughout the planet. And because there is no location that is the middle of the planet per se, when we talk about the vertical, Greenwich, England, or the prime meridian was chosen as the 0 degree mark. So we move west from the prime meridian by degree, all the way around, or east from the prime meridian, and those go 180 degrees in total. So you got north and south 90 degrees, east and west 180. But kind of the thing you want to remember when you're taking the Part 107 test is you can see this line of longitude here at 75 degrees, then one here at 90 degrees, 105 degrees, and 120 degrees. Most of the United States will be here between 75 and roughly about 125. And will occur for the most part, except for the tip of Florida here, 30 degrees north to about 45 degrees north. So the thing you do want to remember when taking the test, because it is multiple choice, is if any of the answers for your sectional chart are longitude east or latitude south, it cannot possibly be in the United States. That would not be a correct answer because the United States cannot move into any of those sections. It must be from 75 degrees west, and it must be from 15 degrees north. Otherwise, you will not have the proper documentation for the United States. So west and north are the two that you want to remember. We also want to remember that to identify any point on the Earth, a geographic coordinate or grid system was created. These can be quite long, and this is what GIS is based on, Geographic Information Systems. And we can plot any point on the planet if we go out enough decimal places or degrees or minutes, seconds, etc. There are many ways, depending on which geographer has written or which profession you're in, that you'll see these noted. They can be decimal places, they can be degrees, minutes, seconds, and they can vary based on the coordinate system that's being used. For the most part, for the sectional chart, you're going to use degrees, minutes, and seconds. So meridians are longitude lines, and you might need to remember this because it may be on the test, that there are meridians of longitude and parallels of latitude. The meridians of longitude stretch vertically from pole to pole, and the parallels of latitude circle the Earth, and with the imaginary line known as the equator being the 0. Equidistant from the poles lies the equator at 0 degrees, and each pole is 90 degrees north and south. The prime meridian stretches pole to pole, was set at 0 degrees, and it goes through Greenwich, England. You will also note that that is later, in a later chapter, when we talk about METARs, that Greenwich, England is also the place of Universal Coordinated Time, otherwise known as Zulu time, which is the time by which all pilots around the globe set their standard time to know. So we go from the prime meridian time or the Zulu time or the universal coordinated time, and then we figure out our own time zone. So in New Jersey, we're East Coast, so we tend to be a couple hours behind, but don't forget about daylight savings time because that changes things. Now let's take an example from the book. If you go to Figure 21, Area 2 in your testing supplement, you will find Garrison Airport, and you'll get a question in your test prep book, I believe it's Q1099, that requires you to figure out the latitude and longitude of Garrison Airport. How do we do this? Okay, so nicely circled here, I have 48 degrees and 101 degrees. Okay, 48 degrees north, 101 degrees west. Okay, it cannot be east and it cannot be south because the United States would not fall in that area. So when we move in degrees, remember that this is based on the idea of a clock. So it's degrees, minutes, seconds. So in this case, we're going to look at minutes. So this is 48. You would think this is 47, but it is not. These are done in 30-minute increments, and you get another long line here. So if this is 48 degrees and we head south, then we know that the lower number must be 47, but 47 is well down here off the chart. This is 47 minutes, or 47 degrees, 30 minutes. We know that because it is the hash mark, and these degrees are cut in 30-minute sequences for these grids that show up nice and big throughout your sectional chart. So if this is 47 degrees and 30 minutes, we can literally count the hash marks. 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, sticks out a little further, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40. That's where the 40 minutes comes from. Now, you'll notice that the 10-degree increments are a little longer, and 5-degree increments are a little longer here. So just by looking at this long, elongated little hash mark, I would know that that's the 40-minute mark. And Garrison might be a little bit below it, but that's going to be pretty close. Now, simultaneously, we know that this is the 101 degree of longitude, and longitude goes vertically up and down. So if this is 101, this is 101, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Notice it's a little longer. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Notice it goes both. Here's 10 more. That's 20. Here's the 5. That's 25 and 26. But you can feel free on your chart while you're looking at Figure 21 Area 2 to count each of the hash marks. This will give you the precise location for Garrison Airport. So it would be 47 degrees, 40 minutes, north, it has to be north, and 101 degrees, 26 minutes, west. And that would be the answer to the question if they were to ask you the latitude and longitude of Garrison Airport. Now, when we get into the idea of airports, and I will put up a couple of additional videos on your syllabus talking about airport signs that take you in nice videos around the airport. So this will be a kind of abridged version, and I'll ask you to watch these other supplemental videos that have been done. But what you should know is that there are a couple different kinds of airports. Not A, but B, C, and D will likely be towered airports. These are larger airports. The tower on B and C will likely run 24 hours a day, and D may have a time frame that is listed on the sectional chart. Or you can look up the airport on Google. These towers control FAA personnel, otherwise known as air traffic control managers. Air traffic control is known as ATC, air traffic control, and it is responsible for providing safe, orderly, and expeditious flow of air traffic at these airports. In other words, the people in the tower watching the radar direct planes in, they direct landing, they direct takeoff. And if you fly in this area, you must have permission of air traffic control. That would be different than a non-towered airport. In a non-towered airport, which usually runs either under instrument flight rules or visual flight rules, the pilots are responsible for watching and communicating with one another. What do? They often use what is known as the CTAF, or the Common Traffic Advisory Frequency. When looking at your sectional chart, that frequency number will be the one adjacent to the C that looks in the kind of dark blue, or it could be dark red circle. And it is a frequency, a radio frequency, designated for the purpose of providing airport advisory practices while operating to and from an airport without a tower. So pilots can speak to each other. They can signal their intent to land, their intent to take off, and they can avoid collisions. These would not be used, CTAF would not be used at a highly congested airport area. That would be done by air traffic control. But on smaller airports, where you might find single engine planes and the like, you're going to find this is the frequency that pilots will use. So if you had a radio that could pick up the frequency, you could listen to manned aircraft while you were flying in the vicinity to increase your safety. You should also know that Unicom is available, and it's a non-governmental air-ground radio communication station which may provide airport information at public use airports that do not have a tower or a flight service station. Let's talk a little bit about the airport markings. There are markings on a runway. One is the blast pad, and these are designated by these yellow chevrons. And this would be where, if it was a jet airplane, where the exhaust would come out. So that's why it's called the blast pad. And you should note that every runway has a number. And we'll talk about this in a minute, but these are related to degrees on the planet. And it is a runway number is determined by the nearest 1/10 of the magnetic azimuth, 360 degrees on Earth. So the numbers can go up to 360. So if there's a 27, that's really 270 degrees. If there's a 9, that's 090 degrees. You'll also notice that a letter is added if there are 2 or more runways parallel to each other to differentiate the degrees. So at large airports, you may find 2 runways that are running at 27 degrees, so you might need a right and a left. You may find as many as 3, so you may have right, left, center. Let's also look at a couple of other items on here. Here's your threshold markings. Okay, here's your center lines, your aiming markings if you're landing, and your runway designation number, and your touchdown zone markings. This allows pilots while landing to know exactly where to place their wheels in the airplane for a safe and efficient landing. In addition, you may find airport signs on an airport, and you may have these on your test. And you may say to me, why are there questions on the test related to airport signs if I can never fly there? This is so you understand if you ever are at an airport and you have a better appreciation for manned pilot. So items in red might be taxi runway hold position, a runway hold position, a runway approach hold position, an ILS critical area hold position, a red sign denoting no entry. So these are kind of signs that give you information. So think of them, I like to think of them the same way I might think of a sign on the ground. If it's red with white lettering, it's a command you must follow. In other words, think of a stop sign. Now, there are locational signs. Those would be black with yellow letters like taxiway locations or runway locations. Throughout the runway, you will find these distant markers, and it provides the remaining runway length in 1,000-foot increments. That'll be very important for takeoff to know how much runway is left. In addition, if you have a yellow sign with black lettering, these would be runway safety area, obstacle-free zone, an ILS critical area boundary, directional signs, a runway exit sign, outbound destination, inbound destination, taxiway ending marker, and a directional sign. So largely directional signs if they're yellow with black lettering. Now, what you want to remember is there are 6 types of signs. So we'll start up here in the upper right-hand corner. There's the mandatory instruction. Those are red with white lettering. Entrance to a runway, critical area, prohibited area. Those are mandatory instruction signs. The location signs are black with yellow inscription. Here's taxiway, runway, you've now reached it. Directional signs will be yellow background with the black inscription, identifying the destination of the intersecting taxiways leading out of an intersection. Destination signs, yellow with a black background again, black inscription and arrows, information such as runways, terminals, cargo areas, civil aviation areas. Information signs can be yellow with a black inscription, which might give you other information, like the taxiway ending area. Runway distance remaining signs, as we said, are black with white lettering. You'll want to memorize these signs and you'll want to familiarize yourself with them. There aren't that many questions on the Part 107 test, but sometimes they can be some of the easier questions on the test.